Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner. Well, the new format for Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been underway. We've had our first YCS under the new ban list, so we've even had a regionals in some places under this new ban list. And this format is pretty much similar to the one we had before. We just really only got rid of one degenerate deck in the form of... Oh, no. We got rid of two degenerate decks. The Danger Dark World FTK deck is gone. And at least based on how the last YCS is, Goki seems to have taken a significant drop in play. However, Dark Wario Turbo variants still exist because guess what? They didn't hit Gumblar Dragon, and that's going to be something that's going to come back and haunt Konami. Man, even Japan didn't hit it, but then again, on their ban list, they hit a lot of other things. But them leaving Gumblar Dragon alive is going to be a problem. Another deck they also didn't touch on this ban list, which is conveniently the one that I happen to be playing, is Sky Striker. Nothing happened on this list. If anything, they got rid of two of my worst matchups. Now, admittedly speaking, my other bad matchup, Thunder Dragon, is also still at full strength. And they didn't hit anything for the Altergeist deck, which that matchup is... that one is really iffy. I do feel like if Altergeist doesn't see its floodgates in a timely manner, I win, but if they do and I can't out them, I lose. And what else can I really say? The Danger Slash Draw FTK deck will definitely be an issue, especially as more people figure out how to make that deck tick. And then there's the whole thing that happened with Prank Kids at this last YCS. Honestly, I'm just going to attribute that one to people just simply not knowing how that deck plays or how to side deck against it. But in the following events, that's not going to happen again. People will be ready for it. We're going to see the return of things like Dimensional Barrier inside decks. Hell, you might even go one step further with Strikers and just put in non-fusion area and have something for the Thunder Dragon matchup as well. But in any case, though, you guys wanted to see what my Sky Striker deck list was looking like when I put up that poll a couple weeks ago. And then a ban list dropped, and I wanted to wait until I've had some time to actually play with the deck under the new format before I actually do something. So here we are. With that being said, let's get into this. So what is Sky Striker to the uninitiated? Sky Striker, for all intents and purposes, plays like an old style control deck, something like the, say, Hat. Now, this is different from what people would consider to be control now, like Altergeist or True Draco, but there is a difference between what Sky Striker does and what those two do, because Sky Striker wants to interact with the opponent, disrupt them, slow them down, and make them play at its pace where it will win through a grind war. And as such, the deck's offensive output is rather limited. Now, the other decks I just mentioned tend to instead try and beat you through flipping up cards that say you can't play the game and just never letting you do much. Like, they don't want to interact with you. Altergeist does interact with you a bit more, but Draco doesn't want to interact with you as much. Like, those are what I consider to be stun decks, and honestly, helmet decks as well, especially in the case of Draco, because it's just, you turn off your brain, you activate your draw cards, and flip your floodgates, and you just swing until they're dead. So, that's why I kind of have taken a liking to this deck, because I miss playing decks like Hats and Disaster Dragon and such forth, and this is the closest thing I'll ever get to playing that kind of strategy in, because even though they've attempted to make control decks like this happen since 2014, they just haven't been able to work because the other decks just have too much negation power that will slow you down, or they can just float through your removal. But Sky Striker manages to not care about this as much because it can actually, like, its removal is enough to negate or just stop the opponent from plussing entirely. Like, it's 1-for-1 removal. Like, yeah, back in the day you would play 1-for-1 removal like Dimensional Prison, but now your 1-for-1 removal becomes 1-for-2 removal. And admittedly speaking, that's disgusting and a sign of just power creep, but unfortunately you need this kind of power creep for a deck like this to function in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of where we are at with how the game is. So, now we've had that long introduction, I'll actually show you guys the list. and how this deck functions. So the gimmick of Sky Striker is that it revolves around one monster being able to go into these one-card Link summons. You play a bunch of Link 1s that are all Sky Striker required, and you have no other actual monsters in your main deck. You have Ray here. So Ray is a Dark Warrior, level 4, and during either player's turn, you can tribute her to special summon a Sky Striker Link monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. And also, when she's in the graveyard and your Sky Striker monster leaves the field by a card effect or through battle, she can special summon her back. Both of these are hard once per turn, but you can do some really neat things with Ray. You can swing, tag her out into a Link monster, swing again. Your opponent kills your Link monster, you can bring her back and then have her immediately go into a Link monster, depending on the situation. And since it's chainable, when your opponent tries to target her for removal effects, such as, I don't know, they're still playing Dimension Prison in 2018, you can tag her out into your Link monster and then swing face again. Yeah, Ray's a very versatile card. And then, yeah, that's it. Generally speaking, after this point, Striker decks play hand traps, and I am no exception to that. So I'm playing 3 Ash Blossom and 2 Ogre. The thing about this deck is that you can tailor it for your area, and since mine doesn't have as many combo decks right now as it used to before, I instead have to really only worry about Trickstar and Altergeist decks, and against those, plus the occasional combo deck, Ash Blossom is okay against because I can use this to hit personal spoofing and the Trickstar Field Spell. If I'm up against that matchup, I'll probably side it out against them, if anything else, but it's still an option. And then we also have decks like Electromite Turbo. I can just hit the Electromite and other random pendulum cards. So, like, this is very good against Rogue in some meta, and it's got applications in the mirror, although I don't have to worry about the mirror match right now. No one else actually owns this deck, so there is that. But it's good for hitting multi-roll in that matchup. And against combo decks, it does have some use. You can use this on Summon Sorceress so that it can't actually properly resolve, and it will shut down a combo to an extent. But they have to, if they have Magical Midbreaker Field up though, that's a different story. But it's still something. And then Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is not as OP as it was before. If anything, people will tell you that Ash is okay. However, it's still the most versatile hand trap in the game that can hit so many things, and thus you run it out of necessity. And I really do hope we get that common reprint in the Soulburner structure deck. We're not going to, because we didn't get this as a common reprint in the one struct deck. Same for the Joel Lockbird reprint, but it would be nice. If anything else, I'd like to swap my secret out for supers, but those things are hard to find. Anyway, that's it for the monsters. On to the rest of the deck, which are all spells or traps. We have the most important card in the deck, Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. So, how the gimmick of Sky Striker works is that your all-powerful spells can only be played when you have no monsters in your main monster zone, which is why you have a bunch of Link 1s with odd arrow placements as well, is that you want to keep this empty and just have your one Link monster up here doing the heavy lifting, and then you just have your powerful spells protect you or toolbox. Because that's what this deck is. It's a toolbox strategy that wants to just slow the opponent down through its removal options. And it does this with Engage, which allows you to search any Sky Striker card except itself from your deck to your hand, and then if you have 3 or more spells in graveyard, you get to draw a card. That is the other gimmick of this deck, is that your spells get incredibly good bonus effects if you have 3 or more spells in graveyard, which incentivizes you to play things such as Foolish Burial Goods, Twin Twisters, or even some random mill cards, depending on what you have on your side. Engage is very strong. It's at 2 in Japan, and for a very good reason. I do not see this not going to 2 on the next ban list when we get that in January. Speaking of the other power card of the deck, we have Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor. So this is a quick play effect veiler, but only on effect monsters. It can be used on any effect monster, including your own, which has a neat application. And if you have 3 more spells in the graveyard, you can stat steal their monster for the turn. This is your best defensive card. It's a negation while also being able to protect you. You can use it offensively, much like with enemy control in the past, where you just steal their monster, swing with it, and you can link it off in main phase too. Widow Anchor is good, and it's also been hit on the Japanese ban list. Then I'm playing 3 copies of Multi-Roll. So Multi-Roll is your Spellbook of Judgment clone. When it's in play, you can activate its first effect, which is send one other card to the graveyard, This is you target, then send. So you can target Ray and then tag her out and still resolve. For the rest of this turn, your opponent cannot respond to the activation of your spells with card effects, which is really neat, so that if you are able to lead off with this, you can use it, and then your opponent can't Ash Blossom your engage. They can still draw and Lockbird you, but they can't Ash Blossom your engage, or Ghost Bell your whatchamacallit, another card in here. It's really good for that, and then its more powerful effect is, during the end phase, for every Sky Striker card you activated while this card was in play, you can set one Sky Striker spell card in the graveyard with a different name to your back row, but they are banished when they leave the field. Now, this is where the comparison to Spellbook of Judgment comes up, because as long as it's in play, and as long as you're playing your deck, you're able to reload your back row. And granted, they get banished when they leave the field, so you can't just keep looping everything, which is what makes cards like Hey True Nate really powerful against this deck. But this is what allows this deck to grind its opponents out and try and like win the war of attrition. As you play and engage, and you search a Widow Anchor, and then you set the Widow Anchor while this is in play. This card resets that engage for the next turn, and then when your opponent makes a play, you activate Widow Anchor, and then this resets the Widow Anchor. You do got to be careful with how often you use multi-roll to reset cards, because you do have a card that cycles cards back into the deck. But yeah, this is a very powerful card. I used to play it at 2, but I've bumped it to 3 because I really want to see it in my opening hand without having to engage for it, as I want to open with this and engage. Another card that I recently bumped to 3, and I might put back to 2. This isn't like the one where I tend to alterate between 3 or 2, is the field spell, Sky Striker Airspace Area 0. So once per turn, you can choose another card you control, such as Ray, and you can send it. You can reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and if there's a Sky Striker card among them, you add it to your hand and you send a targeted card to the graveyard. You can tag out Ray in response to this and still resolve this, which is really neat. Also, when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard by the effect of a card, you can special summon Ray from your deck. It's a hard once per turn in that regard. I should point out, actually, and one reason why people will complain about this deck being OP is that your Sky Striker cards don't have a hard once per turn restriction on them. Engage, Widow Anchor, you can activate them in multiples. You just have to keep your main monster zones cleared. And these 2 cards allow you to do that. If you have a monster in the main zone and you can't get rid of it through conventional means, you can use this to try and get it out of there, but you can use this to guarantee that it gets out of there. And this just allows you to see a card, like it's a potential starter card. If nothing else, you can send it off with multi-roll to get Ray, and thus you have more copies of Ray than just the 3. Then 2 copies of Sky Striker Mecha Eagle Booster. So you can target one monster in the field, I believe, or is it just one monster you control? Yeah, you just have to target one face-up monster in the field, and it becomes unaffected by card effects except its own effect, which is important for your Sky Striker Link monsters. And then if you have 3+ cards, 3+ spells in graveyard, it can't be killed in battle. So it's a Forbidden Lance that also acts as a safe zone. Yeah, and having this is what allows you to win the Mirror and the Altergeist matchup a lot easier, and which is why I'm playing it at 2 because of what I have in my locals. If you play more combo decks like Dark Warrior or Goki or Thunder Dragon, then you can cut this down to 1. Then for the 1-ofs, I'm playing 1 Afterburners and 1 Jamming Wave, 1 Shark Cannon, 1 Eagle Booster, and 1 Hornet Drones, and 1 Hercules base. So this can only be equipped when you have no monsters in the main monster zone. The equipped monster can attack 2 monsters each battle phase, and if you have 3 more spells in graveyard, you can draw a card when you kill something in battle, which is really good for clearing out Scapegoat tokens in the Trickstar matchup. And I would assume Prank Kids when your opponent splits up their monsters in that matchup. Also, when it's sent from the field to the graveyard by a card effect, such as these 2 cards up here, you can shuffle back any 3 Sky Striker cards from your graveyard except itself. This is what allows you to also win your long game, because you're going to start recycling your Link monsters or your spells so you can search them again. Yeah, it's a Pot of Avarice. It doesn't actually get you a draw, but I do believe that you should be playing this right now. Some builds will not play it, but that's in more faster formats. Then we have this, which special summons a Sky Striker token, and you have 3 more spells in graveyard. You get 15 stats. Like, the token has the same stats as Ray, unless, of course, you have only less than 3 spells in graveyard. Then it has 0 stats, but the same level as Ray. But it's a Sky Striker token, so you can play this to go into your Link monsters. You just have to have no monsters in your main monster zone. This is a DD Crow, but if you have 3+ spells in the graveyard, you can instead special summon the targeted monster back, which is really powerful in the mirror match, because you can, or anything that plays the engine, because you can use this to target your opponent's Kagari in the graveyard, special summon it back, and use its effect, and then go from there. Jamming Waves targets a face-down spell card and destroys it, and you have 3+ spells in graveyard. You pop a monster on the field without targeting it, and this is the direct opposite. It targets a face-up monster in the field, kills it, and then you have 3+ spells in the graveyard. You non-target destroy one of your opponent's back row, which is good against. These have both applications. Like, most top-tier builds will not play this because they don't have to worry about back row decks as much, whereas I do, so I am playing this. If you don't have to worry about back row decks such as Altergeist and Dracos, then you can cut this for another card like an Upstart Goblin or something, and then this is just generally pretty good. And that's the entire, mostly the entire Sky Striker package of the deck. And after that, it's just like cards that work well with this strategy, such as 3 copies of Twin Twisters. This not only outs back row, but you can use it to discard a spell in order to get to that much needed 3 spell count in the graveyard. Terraforming is just good for searching out your field spell, and if you open with Terraforming and the field spell, you can always just set the Terraforming and then try and use the field spell to get rid of it for a Sky Striker card. I actually only have 2 Called by the Grave on me at this time. I got rid of my 3rd Super Rare a while ago when it got hit, but I really shouldn't have done that. But truth be told though, the 2 seems to be an okay number. This is where I'll probably cut the 3rd copy of the field spell for a 3rd one of this. Hand traps. This deck can deal with them to some extent, but Joel and Lockbird really does help, and I gotta deal with decks like Trickstar. Incidentally though, this can also be used for its ability to just cut off your opponent from activating certain on-field monster effects by banishing their copy in the graveyard, or turning off things like Mellowseek when your opponent's trying to do shit with that. So there's definitely a place for this in this deck now. And then I'm also playing the Foolish Burial Goods package. So Goods allows you to send a spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard, such as Mellifluous Fusion here, and Mellifluous Fusion can shuffle itself back into the deck to draw a card. The important thing is that if you use Foolish Burial Goods, that's already 2 spells in graveyard, so if you're able to get a 3rd spell into the graveyard and then activate your engages, you can start plussing. You can use Goods to send your Sky Striker spell cards to the graveyard so you can get them back through the effects of your Link monsters. And Mellifluous Fusion, even if you dead draw it, is not the worst in the world, because you can use Area 0 or Multi-Roll to just send it off to the graveyard, and you can shuffle back in to get a draw. And then my last spell is Reinforcement of the Army. Ray is a warrior, so naturally you would want to play that. And then lastly, I'm playing 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence, because they're the only 2 I have. If I could play 3, I would play 3. Yeah, Impermanence is kind of needed against combo decks right now, and it's just a solid card in general. Moving on to the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Kagari, 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Shizuku, and 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Hayate. So these all take 1 Sky Striker monster to make, except their element. You can only special summon 1 of these cards' names per turn, so you can't chain this into this, into this, into this, and loop their effects. That would be incredibly stupid. And they all have useful effects. So, Hayate can attack your opponent directly, and after damage calculation, it sends a Sky Striker card from your deck to graveyard. So you can use this to dump Ray, and then it, say, dies in battle, then Ray comes back, tags out, and go from there. Or you can use this to dump your engage, and then go into this main phase 2, and then go into this. It's also useful in a longer game state where you know time is looming. You can just keep swinging for 15, protect this with your Eagle Booster, and yeah, just beat your opponent for that. Shizuku reduces your opponent's monsters by 100 attack and defense for every spell you have in your graveyard. Also, during the end phase, after the turn she was special summoned, during the end phase of the turn that she was special summoned, you can search your deck for 1 Sky Striker spell other than the one that is in your graveyard. So if I have Engage in my graveyard, then I can't search Engage, but I can search out Widow Anchor. But the thing is, though, you can time this with multi-roll in order to get more value. In that play I just mentioned, you could activate multi-roll's effect to reset the Engage from your graveyard, and since you don't have a Engage in your graveyard anymore, you can use Shizuku to search out another copy of Engage. You can also use Shizuku to search out an Eagle Booster or a Widow Anchor, activate those, targeting this monster, and then this will trigger to reset that. So she's a pretty solid card. And then we have Kagari, which just recently got put to 1 in the OCG ban list. Kagari, on special summon, adds a Sky Striker spell from your graveyard to your hand, such as Engage. Also, it gains 100 attack for every spell in your graveyard, making this your biggest beat stick like Sky Striker monster that you go into. And yeah, how many times you can resolve this in a match will determine how well you're able to just perform. I do run one other Link one, which is Clara Andrushka, the Ventrilo Duel. It's honestly like not a very good card. However, it is something I'm playing on necessity because I have to deal with multiple Altergeist players. As its effect is, you can Link summon it using a normal summoned monster in your main phase 2, and it's a spellcaster. And Secret Village of the Spellcasters is a really obnoxious card to deal with in this deck. So I normal summon Ray, link into this. My Twin Twisters are live. I can at least try to do something other than say, you got this match, sir. And then moving on to the rest of the cards. So I'm just playing a bunch of utility Link monsters. It's either I play utility Links or I just play Ghost Reaper targets and main Reapers in the main deck. But like these are the Link monsters that you do need. Savage Strike will give us an Earth Sky Striker Link one, which I'll probably play as a single copy. And then we have Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn, Ningirsu, the World Child's Warrior. I haven't explained this one on the channel before, so this takes 2 Link monsters to make, and it has an effect that works on Link Summon, but only with other World Child's Warriors. That's not going to happen. But his other effect is, once per turn, you can send 1 card you control to the graveyard and 1 card your opponent controls to the graveyard, and is non-targeting removal. The 2 Link monster part is a bit annoying, but it gets around non-targeting... Wow, words are hard here. It basically gets around monsters that can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects, such as the all-obnoxious Dark Destroyer and Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. And we have multiple Chaos Max players here, so that's why I'm playing this and 1 other card in my extra deck. But yeah, Ningirsu is just good removal. You can use this by having your Sky Striker Kagari up in the main monster zone, and then you use Engage to search out your Shark Cannon, and then you use Shark Cannon to special summon back their Link 2 monster they have in their graveyard, and just go into this and do that. And it also just is free. If you have another monster in your main monster zone for some reason, you can always just send that off to the graveyard for Ningirsu and out your opponent's monster. You can also send your field spell off, which would then trigger it. This was also played back in the day to send off things that was given to you by the effect of set rotation, such as the Zephyr Field spell or the Black Luster Soldier Field spell, but that engine doesn't see play anymore. And I'm also playing 1 copy of Borrelsword Dragon and 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon for my Link Force. This takes 2+ effect monsters to make, and when a monster is special summoned to a zone that it points to, you can blow up all monsters that are in the main monster zone, and when it attacks your opponent's monster after that battle, it deals a damage equal to its attack to them. Yeah. Since I'm playing a card that special summons a token to my zone during either player's turn, I can use this to disrupt combo decks like Dark Warrior or Goki by just special summoning my token. He blows them up, and then they have to have more extenders in order to do stuff. It's also just good for getting some extra damage in. And Borrelsword Dragon, we've talked about before. It takes 3+ effect monsters to make. It gains half the attack of whatever it battles in the first battle. It can't be killed in battle, and if I can switch one of any player's monsters to defense for the turn, I can get 2 attacks off in the battle phase. Japan's able to make this, well, it was able to make this a lot easier through the effect of Blow Up Bulb by being able to go into Needle Fiber, into Summon Sorceress, but then Japan just recently banned Glow Up Bulb and Summon Sorceress, so Sword is a bit more difficult to make over there, and now they've just, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen in their form about... We don't have Needle Fiber, so it's not as easy to make this, but it's still useful. You can use Widow Anchors and Shark Cannons in order to actually make this guy. And he's just useful for outing things like Ultimate Falcon or Chaos Max Dragon. He's also pretty good against Cosmo ships. And, yeah. I would like to fit Borrelword Dragon in here, but until Altergeist gets murdered on our ban list here, I'm going to play this. Otherwise, I would play Borrelword. And that is it for the deck itself. A very long video, but that's what we do on this channel. Long but thorough breakdowns of a deck. I've really been enjoying my time with Skyscraper. It feels very refreshing to play a deck with a pace such as this, where you can take your time, beat your opponent down through advantage, and yeah, it also rewards you for just playing well, because Sky Striker doesn't have as much room for error as other decks, and I'm still very much learning how to play this deck optimally, because if you fuck up, even I think once, like, you might be able to fuck up once, but if you definitely fuck up twice playing this deck, you will lose. Like, it's not like you're playing a combo deck such as Goki, where you have this multiple lines of play. If you make a mistake somewhere, like you misplay with Sky Strikers even just one or twice, you will lose the match because the game will spiral out of your control and you just simply cannot get it back. Which is daunting for some, but I do like those type of decks. Especially when you have the ability to just play at a pace that is just more comfortable. And I don't have to worry about 50 million steps just so I can play out my 20-minute turn ones. And it's just, can I open with the Rei to Shizuku? And yeah. So, it'll be sad when this gets hit, but it's been a good deck for a very long time. It's won a couple YCSs now, and while it hasn't been the best deck all the time, it's been consistently a top deck pretty much since its inception. And if you're, again, someone who played older style control decks and you missed those strategies, I, again, highly suggest you pick this up. And before I finish this video, I'll even show you guys a bit of a side deck that I have right now, because locals lol. So, for a side, I'm playing 3 Prankatops to out threats. It's bigger than most Altergeist monsters, so they have to use removal to get rid of it, and I can just chain it. This is just good for decks like Chaos Max, otherwise I'd probably not play it. It's also good in Mirror Max. You just kaiju their monster and you leave them with something in their main monster zone, which turns off their spells and traps. This is just strong in the Mirror Match and for getting over Thunder Dragons. Admittedly speaking, my side deck is not prepared at all for the Thunder Dragon matchup, but that's because nobody's been able to build the deck because of how fucking expensive it is. Thank you very much, Konami, and your incessant need to short print secret rare everything. 2 copies of Galaxy Cyclone. This is for the Altergeist and True Draco matchups. You use this to pop their face down card, and then during the next turn, you can banish this to pop their Floodgates. And so this makes it not the worst thing in the world to discard off of Twin Twisters or to get hit by Meloseek. 3 copies of Evenly Matched. This is for heavy back row decks. My deck plays super slow as it is, so giving up a battle phase to clear out your opponent's set 5 back row is pretty okay. And then 2 copies of There Can Only Be One. This is the one Floodgate that I do play right now. And while it's in play, you basically cannot control more than one monster of the same type, which is totally fine for strikers because I only ever control a warrior and a machine monster at a given time. But against decks like, say, Altergeist, True Draco, and Goki, it's a bit more irritating for them. Well, at least it was irritating for Goki, but against Altergeist and Draco, because they're all monotype mostly. So you flip this in response to a Multi-Faker hitting the board, and they can't summon anything else, and the Multi-Faker just feels sad. And they can't control more than one Altergeist basically at a time. It's like a Gozen match in that instance. I might play 3 of these. I might also play non-fusion area if we ever have to worry about prank kids being a thing, but again, I don't know how long that little spike in popularity is going to last. I imagine they're everywhere on Dueling Book right now. But anyway, this video's gone on for nearly 30 minutes, and I imagine you guys are getting tired at this point, so I'm going to wrap this up and say I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is probably going to be the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile I do for this year. I might play Trickstar Sky Striker later, I don't know yet, but if not, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you again when I do an update to my Yu-Gi-Oh! Ritual Monster and Link Monster collection, because I've managed to finish up at least one of those for the time being. Until next time, this is Blue Star 99, jacking out.